Hi there, welcome to Boy Meets Quilt. I'm Andrew Vay Hansen, and it is officially 2022 now. I haven't posted a video in quite a while, and I certainly haven't posted any videos about any quilts that I've been making over the past year, over in 2021. So I thought I would update my virtual trunk show videos, and I'm going to start with this quilt behind me. This is called Spectrogasmic Therapy. It's basically a rainbow splooging all over the place, but I thought it would be fun to do something that would help me practice my free motion quilting techniques. Now, this quilt I did not make in 2021. I actually made this either in like late 2019 or early 2020. This quilt was made for the President's Challenge in what was supposed to be the Brooklyn Quilters Guild 2020 quilt show. I was co-president at the time, and my other co-president, Margaret Marcy Emerson, we decided to create the challenge where we basically wanted everyone to create a quilt that used the colors of the rainbow. And that was really the only specification, other than it needed to be 36 by 36 inches. And so this is my take on the colors of the rainbow. And unfortunately, as we all know, due to COVID, everything got canceled. Our show was supposed to be in March of 2020, and lockdown in New York City happened about a week before our show was supposed to happen. So it got nixed, and since we're still in the midst of the pandemic, we have not made plans for another indoor show. And so, thankfully, some very creative, inspired members of our guild came up with an idea to still display all of the quilts that were entered into our President's Challenge, all of our beautiful rainbow quilts. And so we did what we call a fence show. And at the church where we have our guild meetings, it's on a city block, and it's surrounded by a wrought iron fence. And it's just perfect. If you just sew some rings at the corners of each of the quilts, you pretty much 36 by 36 inch quilts line up perfectly on the spikes of the fence. So we had these beautiful quilts displayed outdoors in October of 2020. And it was a great success. Lots of people from the community came by, lots of people just walking by and were like, what is this? So it was a great idea to still have a quilt show per se, certainly nothing like our normal indoor quilt shows that we do every 2 years, but still displaying the wonderful talents of our guild and getting the community much more involved than normal anyway, because it was free. You could just be walking by, and then we had members all over the place outside wearing masks, of course, because this was still October of 2020. And we were there available to talk to people about quilts, about our guild, about creativity, whatever people wanted to talk about. And it was wonderful. And since then, we've done 2 more fence shows, and we're going to do another one in the spring of 2022. And for all I know, we'll keep doing them because they practically cost nothing to put together. It's a great opportunity for our guild members to kind of stretch and flex our creative muscles by creating quilts for these specific challenges. And it's just so much fun. And so that brings up a nice question I wanted to ask all of you out there. Obviously the pandemic, we're 2 years in at this point. It's really changed how we live our lives, how we socialize, all of these things. So I'm interested to know, especially those of you similar to our situation who normally do put on quilt shows or whatever, like how have you made changes in how you normally do things to accommodate these new restrictions that we have during this pandemic? And have some of these accommodations worked out to be actually a good thing? I feel like ours has turned out to be a good thing. Even if we do a big indoor quilt show at some point, I think it's great that we're doing these outdoor shows that are really much more involving the community than something that you have to have seen an advertisement for and you have to pay to get into and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just curious if any of you out there have had similar experiences, whether it's with, quilt making or whatever. Put it in the comments. Let's get a conversation going. So back to this quilt. I decided I was just going to do a tiny bit of improv piecing, which you see over here, which is my rainbow, some batiks, rainbow fabrics over here. And I just improvised this kind of flowery burst of rainbow colors. And then my idea was to then use free motion quilting motifs to come out of each of the stripes of colors. And in my mind, I was invoking kind of those psychedelic cartoons that we all saw in the 70s, at least I did, growing up in the mid to late 70s. And just, you'd see all these rainbow colors and flowers and all very kind of like the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds type of a feeling. So that was kind of my inspiration for this idea. And so I did a different motif in each color. Some of the motifs are more successful than others, and some of these motifs I actually loved so much that I used them as fillers for a lot of my future, or not future, but at the time, future quilts. And so, yeah. So let's take a closer look at the quilting. So here we have the full quilt, Spectrogasmic Therapy. And let's zoom in here and kind of take a look at these free motion quilting motifs. So each color is a different motif. I just did basic swirls here for the lighter purple, the lavender. And then next to that, I did some feather ribbons here in the dark purple. I'm better at ribbons and feathers now than I was when I was doing this, but the whole point of this was to kind of, practice. Practice makes perfect, and you got to keep going. This motif I really love. I use this all the time now. So this is basically wavy clamshells, all in different directions. I love how this looks. It kind of has that Asian kimono filler feel that you see a lot of times in like Japanese and Chinese art, which I totally dig. And then leaves for green. That's a pretty obvious one. And I do like leaves. I use leaves all the time in my free motion quilting. I love how these flowers turned out. In order to make this successful, I basically created the larger flowers separately. So I had to cut the thread each time I created a flower, which of course we all know is annoying. But then I was able to fill in around the flowers with the smaller flower petals. And I just think the effect is really worth the time that it took to do that extra bit of work with the larger flowers. Because then the large flowers really pop out. And it has kind of a three-dimensional feel to it. There's some depth there. Then I just did some circle motifs here with the orange. Pretty basic. And then I attempted some hearts here. I don't really love, this is my least favorite of the motifs on the quilt. It's not that I don't like making hearts, it's that I haven't figured out a good way to do connecting hearts with free motion quilting to make them look similar to any of these. So I need to figure that out, because I'd like to continue to use hearts when appropriate. And then over here you can see my fabrics. I did not do any quilting in the prints because I wanted them to kind of be puffy and just stand out on their own. I did not do any quilting here in the remainder of the gray fabric because I wanted the quilting to really be the focus of the quilt. And then, as you can see, I faced the quilt instead of the traditional binding because I really wanted that feeling of everything just continuing off into the distance, so out of the quilt itself. So hopefully that's the feeling that invokes. And that is Spectrogasmic Therapy. I hope you enjoyed looking at these details. I will be posting more virtual trunk show videos of the quilts I made in 2021 relatively soon. We'll see how motivated I get over the next few weeks. And so if you have any questions or comments, please put them down below, and I will promise I will respond. And also, you know, this is a community, so feel free to ask questions. If I can't answer them, I'm sure someone in this community can. So let's get the conversation going. I hope you're all being very creative and happily making during these winter months here at least in the Northern Hemisphere. And yeah. Also, I mentioned the fence shows that the Brooklyn Quilt Guild has been putting on. We've done 3 so far, and we've posted some videos from at least 2 of them. I'm not sure if we have all 3 on video, but at least 2 of them. And so I'll put those links down below in the description box, so please check that out. If you are struggling, if you're in a guild and you're struggling with ways to keep your members motivated because you haven't been able to show your quilts lately, think about doing an outdoor show if you can. You know, it's always dicey, you never know if the weather's gonna cooperate, but if it does, it turns out to be an amazing experience. I highly recommend it. And so I will see you all next time, and thank you very much for watching.